All right. Janice, are you connected? Can you hear us?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes. Okay. You ready? Okay, good evening. This is the monthly meeting of the Hagerstown Board of Zoning Appeals. My name is Steve Bachmiller. I'm the city zoning administrator. Due to the absence of the chairman this evening, it's my role to call the meeting to order and ask the attending members to elect from amongst themselves an acting chairman for the evening.
Nominations?
I elect Jordy to
make
be our
the
chairman for the evening.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for Mr. Stauffer.
I second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed? Okay, Mr. Stauffer, you're in charge.
Good evening, everybody. First, call meeting to order. We'll talk first about board members. So I'm Jim Stauffer, be the acting chairperson this evening. To my left is Aaron Smith. I'm sorry, to my right is Aaron Smith, and beside him is Greg Deck. Also representing us is Debbie Calhoun, acting as secretary. Oh, I'm sorry, and Janice is joined us via video. Representing us tonight will be Debbie Calhoun is the secretary, and also with us is representing the city zoning administrator, Stephen Bachmiller. Quickly tell what function of the board. The decisions in the case heard tonight are based on general and specific criteria as enumerated in the land management code. This is an administrative proceeding. As such, it will be conducted just as if it were a court of law, except we will not follow strictly the rules of evidence. Everyone who wishes to be heard on a particular case will be heard, and each of the cases will be heard in the order filed with the board. Tonight, there's only one particular case. Our procedure will be that we will hear the applicant, witnesses for, then the witnesses in opposition, final remarks by the applicant if there are any necessary, and we'll take the case under advisement and give you a decision within 45 days. You're welcome to stay afterwards to hear the deliberations. We will probably make a decision tonight, but it is not official until it is actually put in writing and submitted. Again, within, you have a right to appeal within 30 days of the written decision and order being provided by the board. And any party participating in the hearing is aggrieved by the decision may appeal the circuit court. This is the 30 days after the date of the decision and order opinion, not the date of the hearing. The rules we have, there are two rules which all participants must follow. Only remarks that we will consider are those given from the witness chair under oath, and we ask that you confine remarks to the things put into the case at hand. With that, we are going to be covering case Z 2020-09, which is a application made by Michael Fitzgerald of Gideon Properties for a special exception for a daycare center in the residential zoning district, and a variance to reduce the required minimum lot size. Mr. Rockmiller, do you want to read the case?
Yeah, enter the staff report into the record. This is case Z 2020-09. The applicant is Michael Fitzgerald, Gideon Properties. Properties are located in the RMED zoning district. The site location address is 382 and 376 South Cleveland Avenue. The request is for a special exception to establish a daycare center in a residential zoning district, and a variance to reduce the minimum lot area requirement for a special exception use to 19,648 square feet at the properties designated as 382 and 376 South Cleveland Avenue, zoned RMED. This application is being made for reasons under Article 4, Section C. A daycare center is a special exception use in the RMED district. In Article 4, Section D5A, the minimum lot area for a special exception use is 20,000 square feet in the RMED district. Deadline for written decision is October 31st of 2020. You have two issues that are before you, the special exception and variance. You have two separate sets of criteria. The first is the general criteria for a special exception, which are shown on page 1 and page 2 of your staff report. Staff would point out that the ordinance lists the child daycare center on a property in the RMED district as a special exception use. The ordinance requires at least 20,000 square feet. They have actually have two properties that formulate the request tonight functioning as one. They are just slightly under the 20,000 square foot lot area requirement together. Therefore, that's why they're requesting the variance. Staff would also point out as it would apply to the Schultz versus Pritz articles for issues associated with the special exception granting in Maryland, that this property is a little bit on the peculiar side in that it's actually a commercial building. The property is improved with a non-conforming commercial building used currently for offices. There are numerous commercial uses that could occupy the building if a local conversion district overlay district were approved by the mayor and council. An office building is located across South Cleveland Avenue from this site, and the municipal stadium is located across the street to the south. So you have locational issues to take into account that where this is a little bit different than if it was buried in the middle of a residential zoning district. Just to give you a little bit of quick background, we have a zoning overlay tool for non-conforming commercial buildings. The building has to be a commercial building, which the building in this case is. We have a zoning tool that if it was approved, other types of commercial uses could go into buildings like that. So it's a lot different if they were converting a house or something like that, because you wouldn't have that option. But because this is designed as a commercial building, we have other zoning relief available for other types of uses. Under the variances, you have the 6 criteria that are found on the bottom of page 2 and most of page 3 on your staff report. And staff notes for the record that the Planning Commission did provide comment, which I'll enter into the record at the appropriate time, that being designated as their representative for the evening. Thank you.
Thank you. So at that point, for the witnesses that wish to speak, if you could stand and raise your hand.
Dan Carroll on behalf of Gideon Properties, I'm an attorney. And
Daniel Wolf, COO of Gideon Properties.
Do you or each of you solemnly promise and declare under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give this board shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
yes,
Yes.
Okay. With that, would you like to present the case?
So Gideon Properties, excuse me, is a real estate company that's been at 382 South Cleveland Avenue from 2012 to just July of 2020. At our peak employment, we had 13 employees. Our hours of operation were always 8 to 5 standard hours. When we used to have a property management in-house, during those times, there's an incredible amount of foot traffic, especially towards the beginning and the end of the month, with residents coming in and us collecting their fees for the month. 382 South Cleveland Avenue is a perfect location for a daycare. It has a drive-through section on the front of the location that then goes back to the back alleyway. It's perfect for handling the drop-off and picking up children. The traffic, the Beacon House, their hours of operation are from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Most of any of the traffic when the surrounding houses would be at work. We plan on building a privacy fence behind 376 South Cleveland Avenue. And the original plans, we had planned on having another fence at the back alleyway and also at the back corner of 382 South Cleveland. After speaking with the Hagerstown Light Department, there's an issue for them to get service, which is on the side of the building. So they weren't, we're going to have to find some way to get around that. But after speaking with the Beacon House, they actually preferred not to have the fence at the back alleyway or on the corner of the building, to use that as a drive-through for the pickup and drop-off. Currently, there's approximately 15 parking spaces at 382 South Cleveland. There's plenty of parking available along Cannon Avenue, which is adjacent to the stadium. I found some daycare examples. One is the Hagerstown Day Nursery. It's on 102 East Washington Street. They're licensed for 20 children, and there's no parking there other than street parking. Another one is the Sunshine Daycare Center. It's on 218 Washington Street, East Washington Street, excuse me. And we tried to get what they were licensed for there, but they would not provide us with that information. The Beacon House, they're a great company. They were established in 2017. As noted before, their hours of operation is from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. They plan to have up to 25 children and 7 employees. The company themselves, they support minorities, low-income households, and exceptional individuals who often get left behind in public schools. Part of their plans with coming to our location was expanding to this daycare. I have some handouts for you guys. I'm not sure. We had proposed the changes to the building as far as removing the gate in the alleyway in the back corner of the building. We do have examples for you guys if you don't have them on hand. And then George Harn had also put this together as far as the proposed play yard behind 376 and the drop-off location along the side of the building. And I have copies for each of you.
Okay, if you'd like to distribute those and file a copy with Debbie as well to put into evidence.
Dan, let her stand in as an exhibit.
I don't know. Guess we can hold it up to the cap of the screen.
Yeah, I didn't know if you guys had one, if there were some minor changes made. Okay.
That went out in the package, correct?
I'll be passing it to you. Thank you.
So would you like to describe the two exhibits and what the variances are from this to what was in the packet?
I'm sorry, sir.
Could you talk to the two exhibits and also describe the differences from what was in the packet to what these represent?
Yes, absolutely. So at the rear of 382, at the corner between 382 and 376, we were originally talking about putting a small fence with a gate there, which we've since removed. And at the rear alleyway of 382, there was also a gate that went the length of the parking back there with a wide gate as well. And we've removed that as well. That's it. That's the only changes for that one.
If I could interrupt for a second, just, Janice, this is a reverse image, just FYI.
Right, I'll take a picture of it. I just took a picture of it. Thank you.
The second exhibit is just a little cleaner exhibit for you as far as the two play yards and without ever all the mess that's kind of in there.
So do you want to talk a little bit about specifically why you're asking for the variation?
So for the variance, excuse me, Mr. Bachmiller had said the requirement is the 20,000 square feet. Between the two properties, we have the 19,648 square feet. And again, I just think it's a great opportunity for the Beacon House in the surrounding area. It's already been used as a commercial space with a lot of foot traffic. which would actually be minimized by them having their targeted foot traffic would only be twice a day, to where when we were there as a real estate company, it was consistent between contractors and tenants of our properties as well.
And I would also emphasize that it's on the edge of the residential community. Across the street is very different zoning, and that this is actually a lower intensive use than the existing one without the variance. And I think that makes a difference as far as the impact on the community. And it's an existing lots that have been there for a very long time. And they're going to continue. It's just one of those situations where you could not get another 450, 60 square feet to bring it into compliance.
And as the owner of the property, at this point, you are the owner of the property, correct?
No, sir, I'm the CEO of the company.
Okay. The current owners of the property, they didn't create these hardships. They acquired the property as it exists now with these conditions?
Yes.
You talk about the number of people that would be there, about 20 or so people using the daycare facility, 20 or so children, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you expect the traffic to be just in the morning and the afternoon for drop off and pickup?
Correct.
But you believe that to be less than what you had before when you were running as a real estate office?
Absolutely, especially at our peak employee with 13 employees and then having property management in-house.
Did you guys want to ask?
The fencing is no longer planned. Is that what I heard you say?
I'm sorry,
The
sir.
fencing
Yes, sir.
is no longer planned to be put in place.
Not at 382. At 382, we're taking out at the back alleyway and at the back corner of the building. So that will remain as is.
The play yard shown on, I guess it's behind 376.
Yes, sir.
No fence there either.
No, that would be added and that would be a large privacy fence.
So you are planning that.
Just behind 376. Yes, sir.
I say there's quite a large embankment there. I think on the other side of the alley that falls down to, I guess, what is it, Hamilton Run there? Am I correct in saying that?
The other side of the alley is other houses, I think.
Is there?
Correct.
Okay. I visited the property and it looked like there wasn't an embankment there behind the alley.
The only drop off of any sorts is just from the curb to the alleyway, and then on the other side of that, it's just housing.
All right, so you are planning the fence there to protect the children?
Correct, yes, sir. And the gate side would be in the back parking lot of 382 to where they would have access.
All right.
For clarity's sake, there's a reference made to apartments upstairs. You're not doing anything with the apartments on the second floor of the building. You're only dealing with the first floor for this, right?
Correct.
Other questions? Anything from Janice?
So the daycare center, is that gonna be at 382?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, the lower level, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And that's the brown building where the apartments are above that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and how does that tie in with the house? Because of 376, that's the White House to the, well, in my picture, the left of the building?
Yes, ma'am. We own that property as well.
Okay,
So if you can see, there's already a fence that runs along the side.
I do see that.
the fence that we are planning out back, the privacy fence, will be completely solo from that. It will not be attached to that whatsoever. It will have its own four sides with a gate that opens to the back of 382.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
So based on the intended use of the property, there aren't other options. This is really the only option you have to be able to design the area for the play area and to use it for pickup and drop off and things like that. There aren't other options. Based on the unique conditions, this is the only option you have.
I missed a,
Sorry, I'm going to ask your question, I'm sorry. Based on the unique conditions of the property, there aren't other options for you to pursue. You really need these variances in order to make this work for you. Are there other things you could do or consider?
There certainly are no less intrusive options. I mean, certainly they could continue as, under their current zoning and do a commercial operation there. I think as a special exception variance is probably the least impactful on the neighborhood. It probably would provide a service. The other daycare centers we found in the area are not anywhere near convenient to this particular neighborhood. I think it does provide a service to the residential community.
Mr. Chairman, staff does have a quick question.
But at any one time, has there ever been as much activity such as the daycare center in that area? Because it's going to be more traffic. Is that correct?
No more traffic, ma'am. We currently have or formerly had a real estate business there. And at our peak employment, we had 13 employees. And we were actually part of our real estate company. We managed about 350 properties as well. So specifically towards the beginning of the month and the end of the month, there was an incredible amount of foot traffic through there, not to mention contractors coming in as well every single Friday, anywhere from 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock to pick up checks.
But you're talking about 25 daycare children, right?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So that would be more traffic.
but we're also effectively adding the adjacent lot for a play area. It would be perhaps, probably not more activity, probably a similar amount of activity actually in the building. It'd be less street activity.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to it being the real estate office, it's been offices in the past. It's also been a doctor's office, which had would have had considerable traffic coming and going with a similar number of staff and patients in and out.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Upton?
Yeah, staff just has one quick question. The drawing that was provided tonight, which is much clearer, thank you, than the one that was provided earlier. Well, this is the first I've seen of the second play yard along the side of the building. Is there going to be that second play yard?
Well, that's already existing there, so I had assumed that they would use that at it's already a fenced-in area.
Okay. I just want to make sure that we have an accurate description of the use for the record.
Yes, sir.
So, okay, thank you.
I'd like to ask, how did you determine that 15 parking spaces would be required?
Required?
Yes.
Based off sorry, it'll take me just one moment here, I'm sorry.
We were going through calculations of one parking spot for every 4 children and 1.5 per staff. I know I did not actually do the calculations, but we were kind of just working them through earlier. So I was getting that number are similar, and there's the stadium across the street and what's in the immediate neighborhood, there's going to be adequate parking.
Well, you understand we can't consider off-street parking.
What's that?
There has to be available parking on the premises.
unless they get a variance for it.
unless you get a variance, which is not requested at this time.
Right.
So you mentioned that there will be vans available. Will they be parked in this area?
I do not know how they're going to operate.
And what about you say
That's
there's,
part of they pick people up. I would assume that they would leave them there during the day.
and according to your calculations, not considering the rental units on the second floor, where do they park?
Excuse me?
The rental units on the second floor, where do they park?
Oh, no, they were not included in the calculations.
How many spaces are available on this property?
How many would have to be set to each unit? Is that a set description?
Well,
I speak to the residential units, I'm sorry.
This is an existing structure, and the amount of, there's 3 parking spaces in back, there's a couple on the street, there's some on the street. It is not, I mean, if you're talking 15 off-street parking spaces, you can need a lot more than 20,000 square feet. Excuse me, for a lot. I mean, that's.
well, the only reason I brought it up is I'm basing it on your calculation here of total 15 required. I don't.
And that would be what is existing on the street, what's in back, what's in the area.
Actually, I had some email communication with the applicant because this question came up because we wanted to make sure that they did not need a parking variance, or if they did, that they applied for it. There's a requirement of 2 parkings, and the zoning ordinance specifically says that special exception uses have to provide parking in accordance with the ordinance. Accordance with the ordinance could also imply seeking a variance. So just so that we're clear. And in the communication that we had, if I remember correctly, I gave you like 3 different options because there really isn't anything in the zoning ordinance that specifically sets the parking for a daycare center. So I looked for comparables in other jurisdictions and in the ITE parking manual. And if I remember correctly, I gave you 3 different options for calculations. And it came in, I believe, with like a requirement for 6 parking spaces. And then the additional parking spaces were reserved technically for the residences, because the dwellings each are required to have 2 parking spaces. So it would be a total of 8. And then also taking into account too that typically people are going to be out of the building during the day going to their own jobs. So even though those 2 parking spaces may be there, they're probably going to, at least 6 of them are going to be vacant because the people living in the apartments are going to be off at their own jobs. But as far as meeting the requirement of the ordinance, so they didn't have to apply for a variance, if I remember correctly, we determined that you needed 6 parking spaces plus 2 for each of the dwelling units for a total of 14, if I remember correctly.
That sounds correct.
Yeah. So, and you have that many on site as we discussed, correct?
Yes, there's 7 out front, 5 on the side, and then 3 out back.
Okay. I did not count the ones out back. Thank you.
And then there's also 2 in a driveway on the other side of the house too. They would be obviously for the people living in the house. So.
Very good, thank you.
Any other information you want to share with us?
There's a size that this is normally I'm supposed to get up and give a nice speech, but I think as we've responded to your questions, I would defer to the board and let you make your decision.
Other questions before we? Yes?
Oh, when are you proposing to start this daycare center in operation?
As soon as possible. We would like to have done it last month, but I mean, there is this process that we have to respect.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Go as soon as we can get the approvals through from the city.
And have there been any concerns in the neighborhood regarding what the proposal to have the daycare center?
None to my awareness.
And I assume you had this posted properly?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
If nothing else, we'll let you go, and I don't see anybody, I'm sorry, yes,
I had that represented.
I apologize.
Commission, so you need to swear me in.
Do you solemnly promise to declare under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give this board shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Stephen Bachmiller, Hagerstown City Zoning Administrator, 1 East Franklin Street. I am representing the Planning Commission. I've already passed out a copy of the memo to you all. I'd like to enter it into the record. This is to Brian Katika, Chairperson of the Hagerstown Board of Zoning Appeals, Douglas Wright, Chairperson of the Hagerstown Planning Commission. The subject is special exception and variance application for Michael Fitzgerald at 376 and 382 South Cleveland Avenue. The Planning Commission reviewed this application and offers the following comments. 1, since the variance to lot area for the use involves 2 properties, the Planning Commission recommends imposing a condition that should the properties ever come under separate ownership, the special exception will be immediately void. Retention of an easement on the lot at 376 South Cleveland Avenue for the play area is not sufficient to meet minimum lot area requirements. 2, the typical landscape buffer is 10 feet per the subdivision and land development ordinance, Article 5, which is administered by the Planning Commission. If their buffer and plantings proposed are less than the ordinance require, they will be required to request a waiver or reduction of those standards from this commission. We take no position on such a waiver until an application and justification are received. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on this application. We designate the zoning administrator or whoever may be representing him at the meeting to represent us and present this communication at your hearing.
Thank you. Any questions from Mr. Buckman? Okay, I don't see anybody in opposition. For the record, just wanted to state that. So at this point, unless there's anything else, we'll close testimony and we will start deliberating. You're welcome to stay or leave. As we said earlier, you'll get something from us in writing within 45 days, and you have an appeal period after that.
And I'll be writing it up pretty quickly. You won't be waiting 45 days.
Thank you. Appreciate all of your time.
Thank you. Okay. So let's walk through the criteria and make sure that we're all on the same page. So let's start with the special exception first. Obviously, they filed the paperwork and documentation as was necessary. So I think the first one is obviously good. The second, let's go through this one here. So, being to grant special exception, so the ordinance lists a child daycare center is an allowed special exception use. The lot size is obviously one of the challenges here, based on the shape and position of the properties and the dwellings on the properties. They did not create that issue. It is slightly less than what is required. Do you have an opinion or thought on that? Anybody?
No opinion.
Janice, can you hear the discussion being happened?
It's muffled, but I can hear okay.
Please speak up if you could, please.
Okay. So obviously, Janice, I'll repeat what I said. The property is obviously slightly under the 20,000 square foot requirement, but close, obviously, we talked about seems to be in opposition to that as an issue. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Something happened to the sound.
Can you hear us?
Janice, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Can you hear us? Okay. So do you have any thoughts on the 20,000 square foot requirement? Item 2.
Are you asking everyone?
What's that?
Are you asking the question to everyone?
We're asking you specifically,
You
Janice.
specifically.
Oh, you're asking me specifically.
The three of us here did not. We just wanted to get your feedback as well.
Okay, it's the 20,000 square foot. That's what's being requested.
A special exemption to not meet the 20,000 square foot.
Right, that's true. That's true. I'm looking at the paper.
Any questions, objections to that?
I don't.
Okay. I think we understand the conditions of approval. They're limited to use proposed by the board. Obviously, I don't think that's a similar challenge. Anyway, the expansion of non-conforming use is not applicable. And the use of variance or special exception for uses that are not enumerated, I don't think that is a challenge for us either. Everybody concur?
I concur.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so the statement at the end, Schultz versus Fritz. Properties improved with a non-conforming commercial building used for offices. There are numerous commercial uses that could occupy the building if the local conversion district overlay district were approved by the mayor and the city council. An office building is located across the street, and obviously the stadium is there. So, taking that into account, are there any concerns or issues for anybody?
I have no concern.
I don't have any concerns on that.
So just so that
Usually the activities with the stadium is in the evening, isn't it?
typically,
Yes.
Not lately.
Yeah, yes. At the moment, no.
You said not lately.
so when I rate your analysis, you're coming to the conclusion that given the location of the property at this intersection with commercial across two streets, and the fact that the building itself is commercial, means that it's really no worse at this location than it would be anywhere else in that residential zoning district. And the argument could actually probably be made that it's actually better here than if it was half a block up right in the middle of the residential.
Yeah, I would say from my perspective, yes, it fits with that.
Okay.
So overall, we want to make a motion for that we approve or deny the first piece, which is the special exception.
I would suggest that you deliberate on the variance and then vote on the variance first, because if you can't approve the variance, the special exception's moot.
Good point. Sorry. So let's move on to the variance. So union condition of the property, I feel like it's been demonstrated satisfactorily that the property is unique based on the layout of the property, the position it's in the corner of the lot that's made up there.
Two intersections.
Yeah, and obviously it's something that they inherited when they acquired the property years ago. So it's I feel like that's been clear.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody agree with that?
I would agree as long as we put in place number 1 from the planning commission.
They stay together?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and I was going to address that afterwards, but I think that obviously we would need to make sure that that is a requirement of whatever we settle on.
Now, and the planning commission did say something about the play area not being sufficient.
Planning Commission's comment is that there are certain codified buffer requirements for uses from property lines that they have to comply with. Compliance could also mean requesting a waiver. They're saying that they have space limitations because the typical buffer is going to be 10 feet, which would kind of chop a chunk off of this play area. So, but they're looking to use privacy fence, which the Planning Commission typically views as a typical effective alternative.
Okay.
The bottom line is that the waiver itself has to be reviewed, whatever they're specifically proposing, has to be reviewed and ultimately approved by the Planning Commission, which is Article 5. As the Board of Zoning Appeals, your authority is Article 4, land use zoning.
Right.
When you get into the specifics of development, that's Article 5, that's the purview of the Planning Commission.
Okay.
So you can approve this, but they still need to ask the Planning Commission if they're going to not put in the required buffer, which is typically 10 feet and a certain amount of plantings every so many feet. If they're going to come in with an alternative asking for a waiver or reduction, they have to specifically ask that board that question.
Okay, great. Thanks. Thank you.
Say there's a problem with the sufficiency of the play area. It's just a technical question associated with the land development standard.
Okay, thank you.
Point of record, do we have the right, or should we consider putting in a statement that obviously they have to get approval on the waiver as part of the condition, or is that assumed?
It's assumed because they're not
Oh,
going to
okay,
get a new certificate from me unless they do it, so.
okay, okay. That's why I brought it up, so we wouldn't have anything that, should not have been addressed specifically.
I'm looking to get them in front of the planning commission at their next meeting on September 30th, so.
Okay, so let's talk about item number 2. So minimum necessary to afford relief. Again, based on the property itself, based on the design of the property, based on intended use, it feels like, in my opinion, that they've met that requirement, that the minimum that they need in order to do what they want to do with the property and use it effectively is what they presented today. Does anybody feel differently?
No.
Best way to frame that is there's just no other way for them to get that small amount of additional land, at 352 square feet.
Third one would be, would compliance preclude common use? Would complying with the ordinance deprive the applicant of uses commonly enjoyed by other similar facilities or other properties? I think, they referenced, without actually putting, anything in front of us to view, but they referenced other facilities in the general area that do the same type of service, that have their own challenges. I think we're probably all familiar with what those properties are. We probably have seen and reviewed those properties before. It doesn't feel like to me that the request that they have is a significant difference from what we see in other areas. They would not be getting anything significantly different than what other common use areas have gotten through their past requests. It feels like this is kind of in line with what we've seen in other areas. And I don't think they're getting anything significantly different from what other people enjoy. Does anybody disagree with that?
I don't disagree.
Special privilege, I don't think it's a special privilege. In my opinion, based on what they talked about, what we looked at, it feels like it's in line with what the use of the property could be, what they want to do with the property, if it's the structure, if it's the location, if it's the property, if it's the neighborhood. And I don't think they're getting special privilege that couldn't be asked for by other people under the same conditions. So, do you have any other thoughts or comments on that?
No.
Self-created hardship, I think obviously, they inherited the property with the layout and structures on it the way it's designed. So I don't think they've created the hardship themselves. They're looking for alternatives to be able to use what they are sort of stuck with based on the property they've acquired. And again, goes back more than 8 years at this point, I believe. So. Number 6, consistent with the intent of the ordinance. So is granting the variance in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the ordinance. And obviously, I think that, as we talked about other properties in the general area, other uses of facilities for similar purposes, the surrounding neighborhood that it's sitting in, I think in general, it seems like it's consistent with what the intent is. They've made allowances for parking, they've thought through pick up and drop off, they've thought through the things that they would need to have in this facility. They've made a combination and talked about what they would be for the apartments that would remain above. Feels like they've balanced those things out.
Yes, the only thing I would say is that the safeguard to me would be that fence at the play area. I think that's a must.
Oh, yes.
So any other comments on the variance from anybody?
I have none.
Don't have any.
Do we want to make a motion for what we want to do, whether we agree with this and put any conditions on that? I would say at this point, as the chairperson, I don't think I should make the motion, I'll be correct. So,
No,
someone else wants to
I make a motion to approve the variance.
we have a second?
I second the motion.
Do we have any restrictions we want to put on the variance, I should ask? And
That might be a good place to put your condition
condition of the.
about tying the properties together since
Yeah.
the variance deals with the lot areas issue specifically.
So specifically, Greg, when I say that you're requiring both the fence as a requirement of the property as they've outlined, and the recommendation from the planning commission that the two properties, that this variance is only in place as long as two properties are owned by the same parties. The parties could change ownership, but they can't be separated to two different parties. Make that part of your recommendation?
I would approve based on those two conditions, yes.
Yes. Mhm.
Do we start a second?
Second,
Yeah, so Janice?
yes,
So all in favor, say aye.
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 all right.
Opposed? Okay, variance passes.
Then you got your special exception.
So the special exception then. Again, I think based on what we talked about earlier with the special exception, it seems to fall in line again with what we think kind of meets the needs for their desired use of the property. Obviously, there were some concerns about the property, but do we have any final feedback on that? So anything we want to add as any requirements or questions, concerns?
Well, as we stated, while it's zoned residential meeting density, there is commercial use all around the area.
Mhm.
So it's, as Steve mentioned earlier, it's not like putting it in the middle of a residential area.
So do we feel like we should be able to vote on this one? Someone want to make a recommendation on the special exception?
Recommend that we accept the special exception.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Then all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No?
Okay, we're done.
Okay.
Thanks again, everybody.
Thank you.
The planning commission